Hello. All right, we are live. We are live here tonight, defending your faith Bible study. So glad to be here with you. We are going to take about the next 30 minutes here, and we're going to get started in a while. So take your time here as we get going. Grab a drink, grab I don't know, Bible, something to take some notes with, and we'll enjoy our time here together. We are live streaming right now at 6 o'clock. We got about 30 minutes before it starts. People were asking me why we do it this way. It's so people can jump on, and you know that there's a place to jump on and before we get started, so you can kind of, I don't know, get ready for everything we're going to be doing tonight. So there it is. There's our answer. So really excited about tonight's teaching. I think it's going to help some people, and looking forward to what all God might be doing. I want to make sure I don't mess that up. Okay, good. So all right, jump on in, and we'll be hanging out here together. Also in the chat room, feel free to tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself. Maybe we'll get some conversations rolling in our chat room. We look forward to that as always every single week with our Bible study. Let's see if I can adjust that quick. No, that's not how you do it. I probably can do it like that. There we go. Okay, so we'll be jumping on here. You'll do it the same way we've done it for the last several weeks, and at 6:30 we will jump on with a live teaching, Defending Your Faith, week number 5. So if you're here right now, just jump on and maybe say hello in the chat. And I know you're getting the uh, stream link as we speak. So, okay. Hi there. We'll be starting at about 6:30, so everybody can kind of chill. Maybe grab a drink, grab your Bible, take some notes, something to take some notes with. Look forward to hanging out with you guys. All right. Well, I'll be back in a few minutes here. Just take your time. We're going to start in about 30 minutes, about 6:30. So we're just using this as our public uh, foyer to say hi, get everything kind of rolling, get a little background music playing here, and I'll be back in just a second. I'm going to go get myself a drink, actually. right. Good evening, everybody. Go ahead and we're going to start about 6:30, so about 25 minutes from now. Go ahead and grab a drink. I'm drinking Milo's sweet tea, 0 calorie. If you've not tried it, man, is it delicious. Sometimes you can't find it because the stores go out, but man, is it terrific. If you like 0 calorie drinks like I do, this is the one, Milo's. It's in the yellow can versus the red. All right, so we're saying hello for a few minutes here, and then 6:30 we'll be kicking off with our Defending Your Faith Bible study. Feel free to say hello in the chat, maybe your name and a little bit about yourself, and we'll make the chat like our foyer, so we can get to know each other a little bit and make this as relational as possible, even though we're online. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes here. Grab a drink, get some stuff to write down some notes. We got a lot to go over tonight. Look forward to it. Starting at 6:30. All right. All right, good evening, everyone. Looking forward to sharing this time together with you. We've got about, looks like 20 minutes before we get started. Once again, just say hello in the chat room if you're with us, and we will take this time to get to know each other a little bit and hang out together. I've got my drink here. Grab a drink and we'll kind of relax and think, and we'll do some teaching. It'll be fun. So anyway, yeah. All right. So people are joining the live stream, and it starts at 6:30. So we got a few minutes. Take your time. We'll see you soon. All right, we're going to get started here in a few minutes. Looks like a little over 5 minutes away from getting started. Hello to everybody. I'm glad you guys are all hanging out here. A couple of us online. Join us in the chat room. Say hello and where you're from. And if you got a prayer request or anything like that too, that'd be a great place to put in the chat room. And the rest of us can pray for you. Grab something to take some notes with tonight. Grab a drink. We're gonna dive into some pretty cool stuff. All right, 5 minutes from now. So we're about 5 minutes out. See you soon. All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Getting started with our Defending Your Faith week number 5 of our Bible study. Hello, everyone here together. I'm drinking Milo's 0-calorie iced tea. If you've not had this and you're one of those 0-calorie people like me, it is pretty delicious. Let's start off with this. If you're online with us here, join us in the chat room and say hello. Maybe just a sentence or two about who you are, where you're from, making it as relational as possible. Also, if you got like a prayer request, throw that in the chat room as well. We want to make sure that we pray for each other and hang out with each other as much and make this as relational as possible. Considering what we're going through, it's kind of some deep stuff, but I want to make this, and I realize we're spread out over the whole goodness knows how far away we are, but I want to make this as relational as possible, so we can all kind of be together. That's the idea of an online Bible study, the way we're doing it. This is week number 5. We're wrapping it up. This is it. We out after this time, and after we're done here, this will all be still on YouTube. You can, if you miss anything or want to share this, feel free to do just that. Okay, here's a thought I want to kick us off with first, and it's this one. Is religion the number one problem in the world today? In a 2018 survey of more than 21,000 people from all regions of the world, the majority of respondents identified religion as the primary source of most global conflict today. Okay, so is that true? Is it really the number one problem in the world today? 2018 seems like at that time people said yes. If we could just do away with religion, then yeah, we would all have peace and harmony. Let me tell you some truth, some facts, and also how I believe the enemy is going to use this thought. First off, Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, Christians, we are not all the problem. We're not the biggest problem, and I can prove it to you. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But you can see how the Antichrist is going to use this argument. All we have to do is just get rid of religion. And if we can get rid of religion, then everybody will be happy. We just get rid of God. Remember back in the book of Genesis, they built the Tower of Babel. They built it up to heaven. If we just all were unified together, if we were all just working together, we could get up to heaven. In other words, we don't need God to get to heaven. We can have this utopian society right here in our lives today without God. Matter of fact, God is the hindrance. See, God is the reason why we don't have peace instead of the Prince of Peace. So we can see how the Antichrist will use this humanistic kind of formulation to get his will across. Now, when we look at religion and the actual issues that are being dealt with today, you look at communism, for instance. Communism is actually the greatest killer of all time with 94 million deaths. See, religious differences, now it's a lot, but they've only killed between 10 and 25 million. And when you take out Islamic and other religions and you get just to Christianity, you're really looking at only 1% of war deaths. Think about that, only 1%. Now, also, you take that number, and I don't know how to get to this math, but you take out the Crusades, you have very, very few of the war deaths started by Christians in the name of Christ. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Crusades, because this is always brought up. Well, Christians in the Crusades. Hey, it was terrible and awful. And what they were doing in the name of God was not good, not what Jesus himself said to do, which is the idea of turning the other cheek and peace and love and etc. But you go back to the Crusades and you think about what they were about. This was a group of Christians that was not allowed to even read the Bible. They were not allowed to study what the Word of God even says. At that time, if you translated the Bible into the common man's language, the church at the time, what's now the Catholic Church, the church at the time would hunt you down and burn you at the stake for daring to put the word of God into a translation into the human, into the mankind, the people, just the people's hearts and minds. So listen, that's not, I can just say it this way, that's not Christianity, and it's not even Catholic Christianity today, and it's not Christianity that we found in the Bible. It was a group of people that had hijacked the truth of the gospel and were using it for their own political gains, their own governmental gains. And of course, Jesus frowns down on all of that because he is not a political leader. He shunned the idea of being a political leader, and instead he was the spiritual leader. Even when everybody else wanted him to be a political leader, he said, no, I'm a spiritual leader. So people see religion as the main thing killing everybody. That's just not true. It's actually socialism and communism that's killed far more people, somewhere around 10 times more people than any religion or ever has. But see, what I found is people don't care about the facts. They care about the way we feel. And so that's the problem. And the reality is, no, religion is not the number one killer. Communism is by far the greatest killer in human history, and so on and so forth. Also, when you take just back to the idea of democracies and republics, when you take and you look at modern, let's say from America on out, you have, I don't think there's one, but there might be one instance where a democracy declared war on another democracy. It's almost always some dictatorship versus democracies, or dictatorship versus dictatorship. They're almost never instigated by democracies because the people, when it's done right, the people speak, and we do not want war, we want peace. Okay, so I got a couple other things. Today is going to be like a kind of a mixed bag, only because I wanted to get to the end and see where I was at. So I got some, it's going to be kind of jumping around from here or there. Okay, so this next idea, the Kalam cosmological argument. The what now? The what? Here is the Kalam cosmological argument. Number one, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Number two, the universe began to exist. Number three, therefore, the universe has a cause. This is a premise. This is kind of one of the ways to prove things here. This argument goes like this. Okay, everything that exists has a cause. Now, it could be that cause may or may not be purposeful, but it was still a cause. Something started it. Nothing starts without something starting it. You don't have a car without a designer and a builder of the car. Cars do not just show up. Matter of fact, nowhere in nature, in the universe, does something appear out of nothing. Now, sometimes it may look like something's appearing. Let's say there's a new kind of bug or a new kind of this or that, but there was always a cause. Even if it was a random cause and some matter smashed in with other matters, there was something that happened that put these things together. So everything that exists has a cause. Now, the universe exists. We are living in it. We are part of it. So therefore, the universe has to have a cause. This is really critical when it comes to defending your faith, because they'll try to say the Big Bang, it banged and outshot all the matter of the universe. Well, hold on a second. Nowhere in the universe has there ever been something that appears out of nowhere for no reason. That does not happen. And since the first premises are true, that makes the conclusion true. If something is here, it's here because someone caused it to be here. Nothing just pops out of existence. Every existence, every experience, there's scientific evidence to prove why it's there. So now the second law of thermodynamics says this: processes taking place in a closed system always tend towards a state of equilibrium. All right, that basically means that the universe is a closed system, right? There's an edge to it, and this universe is slowly running out of energy. And if the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. So the second law of thermodynamics points us to a universe with a definitive beginning. And if it's a scientific fact that the universe is expanding, which is true, that means it sprang forth from a single point in the past. And that makes both of the premises of the argument true, that nothing pops into existence without a cause. Therefore, the universe began at a point in time. And this means the conclusion's also true. There had to be a being that banged the Big Bang. The universe had a cause. So it can't cause itself. There has to be something behind the cause. Now, why is this important? Because when we start to think like this, it removes the idea of just, there was no God. There is a God. And we talked about that in week 1. The critical reasoning that there is a God. It breathes purpose into every part of our lives. Because now the point of our lives is to go back and find the creator that started this whole process. If we're here on purpose, we can only find the purpose why we're here in the one who created us on purpose. And see, the atheist must then believe that the universe came from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing. Okay, that takes a lot more faith than the idea that there was a creator and the universe is here by design. Nothingness doesn't even have space or depth to it, by the way. We're talking about nothingness. That's like, that doesn't even have, that's not a black room that's black. It means there's not even a room. It's completely nothing. So the Big Bang is an idea that lots of atheist scientists came to reluctantly, actually, because it sure sounds like the Genesis creation story. And if something can come into being from nothing, then it becomes inexplicable why just anything or everything doesn't just come out of nothing. Why don't bicycles just come out of nothing? Or albums, rock and roll albums, root beer. Why don't they just pop out of nothing? Why is it in the universe that nothing ever comes out of nothing? Why is, for instance, why is nothingness discriminatory? If the only thing that can come out of nothing is the entire universe, well, why hasn't that happened again? Another one's, why isn't just other things coming up out of nothing? See, this proves that the universe had a beginning. This proves the point that there is a God, there is a creator. That's why the Bible starts out with Genesis chapter 1. There was a creation. It's such a critical part of the philosophy. It comes right out of the gate with this idea because this is what kicks us all off. This is what starts the whole thing. It had a beginning. We had a beginning. We are here on purpose. So when it comes to defending your faith, the Kalam cosmological argument is incredibly powerful stuff, and it's not easily rebutted. Matter of fact, you can't really even find one online. It's such a solid, bulletproof argument. It really doesn't have anybody that's taking it on online. Okay, how about this? The fine-tuning of the universe. Now, if you're sentenced to death by firing squad, and there were 1,000 marksmen taking aim at you, but all 1,000 of them, only 20 feet away, missed completely, would you think that was an accident? I mean, there's no bullets around, nothing. They were aiming at your heart, they were aiming at your brain, they were aiming where they're supposed to aim when they pulled a trigger for a firing squad, and 1,000 of them did not hit you. What would those odds be? The odds are way too low for us to think that was an accident. Oh, let's everybody put another bullet in there. Let's try it again. No, firing squads, by the way, are usually 8 to 10, and you don't survive them, let alone 1,000. No, if there were 1,000 marksmen that took aim, you'd say, look, guys, you guys all did that on purpose, didn't you? Every one of you decided not to shoot this person. And that's how we came about this argument. So that's why the fine-tuning of the universe is important, because the universe is so incredible that it even exists at all. The very structure of the universe, it's so specific, and the equations are so specific, it really boggles the mind. For instance, just the idea of particles and how big they are, force and gravity, electromagnetism, All of these things put together, that they even exist at all, is really totally mind boggling. If even one of these numbers is off by a single digit, force, gravity, electromagnet, if they're off by a single digit, one little number, the universe would not be a life permitting universe. There'd be no interactive life of any kind. It couldn't exist because gravity wouldn't exist. There'd be no stars. Therefore, there'd be no energy. There'd be no life. There'd be no planets. There'd be nothing. If just one of the string of numbers is off. In other words, 1,000 people took aim at the heart of somebody, and all it looks like that was here on purpose. The odds are too ridiculous that it happens to be accidental. Okay, let's take gravity, for instance. The force of gravity is determined by gravitational constant. That's the number, the gravitational constant. And if that number were off by one number, there'd be no universe at all. Gravity would not work as we know it, and it totally disassembles everything we know as the universe. Well, how big is that number? The gravitational constant. If that number were off by 1 to the 10th to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. That means one number with 60 zeros behind it. Now remember, a million is one with 6 zeros behind it. This is a ridiculously long number. Enormous number. And if it was off just by 1, so you have 60 numbers, 5, 2, 6, 8, 4, 7, and you do that 60 times, and one of those, instead of 7, was 6, we have no universe. Now that's pretty wild. I heard it said this way. Here's what the odds are. Take the state of Texas, and you fill it full of quarters. The whole state of Texas. Now, I mean, if you've ever been to Texas, it is mind-numbingly huge. Matter of fact, if you're driving from here, my oldest sister lives in South Texas. When you drive from northern Indiana to South Texas, when you get to the border of Texas, you're only halfway to where she lives in South Texas. The rest of those other states is just halfway. Take the state of Texas and put quarters over the whole thing. But not just one quarter, not just like a carpet of quarters. Make the quarters 3 feet thick. Blanket Texas with quarters. Now fly a helicopter around and randomly pick one place, cram your arm into there at a various depth of your choice, grab one quarter, pull it out, and it's the right one. That is the odds that this life-permitting universe exists like it does. Why is that so important? Because when we look at the entire universe, creation itself, here we are, we can prove that we're here. It cannot be by accident. You can't have 1,000 people shooting at a person and they all miss. That cannot be accident. It shows there is a designer. It shows there is a creator. The odds are too ridiculous, statistically, basically impossible for there not to be a creator. So some say, well, it could have been like that. Well, I guess officially there is a chance. I mean, it's just such a ridiculously hilarious chance that it really ends up being no chance at all. Okay, see, the fine-tuning of the universe, let's go a little deeper. It's that way because of one of 3 options. Necessity, okay, it had to be that way. It couldn't have been any other way. Chance, we were just lucky, or design, that it was on purpose. Now let's look at these 3 carefully here. The fine-tuning of the universe, it has to be that way. Necessity. That the constants and qualities, they had to be the values that they are. So it was a physical necessity that the universe be set up the way it was. It has to for some reason. Now, is it impossible to have a life-prohibiting universe? No, it's not impossible. There can be a life-prohibiting universe, one that doesn't have stars and suns and creation. Matter of fact, it's actually much more likely to have a life-prohibiting universe. Not only is a life-permitting universe not a necessity, it's the exact opposite. It's far, far, far more likely that the universe is life-prohibiting instead of life-permitting. That life could not exist instead of life does exist. So it's not a necessity that the universe be designed the way it is. Number 2, chance. Okay, the constants and qualities have the values they do by accident. Okay, we just got lucky. You know, oh, well, you never know. Guess it turned out the right way. So if there was a chance that the universe luckily came into being, it wouldn't be the one with all these galaxies in it. It'd be a small one with a few pieces of matter in it. The universe would be tiny. But instead, we see this incredibly complex universe, which makes it even more statistically incredible and impossible. So the possibilities is so statistically remote that it's basically irrational that it came here by chance. That leads us to the only one that makes any sense whatsoever. The universe is here by design. That's got to be the most logical idea. It actually takes the least amount of faith. Now, let's play this out. If archaeologists find arrowheads, that infers that there's some lost tribe there. You wouldn't pick up an arrowhead and think, or maybe several of them in an archaeological dig and think that that's just some random geological sediment that just happens to be in the shape of an arrowhead with 4 or 5 of them found at the exact same place. No, you'd think that's there on purpose. That's what that is. If astronauts find a spaceship that's wrecked on the moon and it wasn't from us, they wouldn't infer that it was some sort of accident. I guess some steel and aluminum up in space accidentally ran into each other in such a way that, no, a complex thing like a spaceship found on the moon, and it's not a human spaceship, would mean that it was designed there on purpose. It's the only one that makes any sense. The complexity of it shows that it's got to be there on purpose. And the complexity of the universe we live in shows that we're here on purpose. Romans chapter 1, verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. That's a powerful verse. In other words, it's saying the entire creation of the universe is crying out that God exists. His eternal qualities, his power, his creation. It's crying out to everybody that God exists and we need to find him, because that means we are on purpose, because he made the whole universe on purpose. And the only way to find our purpose is in the one who created us. All right, now that's the fine tuning of the universe. Let's change subjects once again, just a little bit here. Let's talk about suffering. What about suffering? How can anyone believe in an all-powerful, all-loving God with all this suffering and evil in the world? And if God does exist, why would anyone want to worship him? Okay, what about suffering? Let's talk about suffering. Because lots of people say, hold on, I'm going to take a quick drink here. Lots of people say that if there really was a God, why is the world so painful? Why is there so much pain in the world? Okay, so intellectually, it is plausible that there is a God that permits suffering. Emotionally, it's hard to wrap our minds around. Why is there suffering? Okay, first we have to ask the atheist, are you saying it's impossible for God and suffering to coexist? Or is it improbable for God and suffering to coexist? In other words, is it impossible? No, we see, okay, it's possible. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about philosophy about suffering. See, if God's willing to prevent evil, but not be able to stop it, he's not all powerful. Okay. So if there's evil and God can't stop it, well, he's not all powerful. He's not truly God. If he's able to prevent evil, but not willing to prevent evil, that means he's not good. So yeah, I could do something about it, but I don't want to. Well, that's not very nice. Number 3, if God's both willing and able, okay, then why does it exist? If he's willing to change the situation, he's got the power to change it, then why does evil exist? Why does suffering exist? And number 4, if he's not able to stop it or willing to stop it, then why even call this being God? It's not God. It's not all powerful. and he doesn't want to help us. Okay, so the claim goes like this. It's logically impossible for God and suffering to both exist. We know that suffering does exist, we see it. Therefore, God must not exist. That's what they're trying to say. But let's rewind a little bit, okay? Let's look at this closely. Because God can create any world he wants. Part of the beauty of being God. And he chose to make a world populated by people with a free will. Now, here's free will. If God forces us, if he forces you and me to love him, that's not real love. If I grab up somebody, I mean, I'm happily married to Misty, but just for sake of argument, I grab up some woman and I say, you will love me. You have to love me. I grab you up and I kidnap her and take her to my house. And that's not. And she says, oh, yes, I love you. That's great. That's not love. Real love cannot be forced. And as soon as we begin to force it, it's not love. So God had to choose. If I'm going to make a being that chooses to love me, it's not forced to love me. At the moment he decides that, he knows there will be part of that being it's part of them that will not choose to love him. So God could either force us to make good choices, or he can give us a free will. He can't do both. So he decides to give humanity a free will, knowing there will be some who choose not to follow him. But does God want a world without suffering? That's a good question. We all know cases where suffering actually came about for a higher cause. Jesus himself, his suffering came about for a higher cause. The cross, the crown of thorns, the stripes on his back. So it is possible for God to allow suffering for a greater good, that we cannot rule out that somehow this is God not permitting these things to happen. There have been times, and you've heard stories where someone was maybe a man or a father went in and took his life and put it in the way so his family could be okay, so his family could survive, and he sacrificed himself. Well, that was suffering for a greater good. Or the heroes on D-Day who tried to save their friends and went out of the way to pick up a injured comrade in arms. And I mean, that is suffering for a greater good. Okay, doesn't it seem, though, with this extreme amount of suffering, that it makes very unlikely for God to have good reasons to permit it? That's what they would say, right? Oh, there's just so much suffering. But suffering from our very limited point of view might be justified from God's very large view of history and how things change other things. We don't understand how eternity works. The ripple of decisions we make, one thing that we think is inconsequential, but it's really totally critical, and it changes one little thing here, and that has an after effect 100 years later. It has an after effect 200 years later and 3 countries away, when one thing we did that was in God's will. We don't understand how these things work. Our brains cannot understand the depth of something like this. And the Bible does not teach us that the main purpose of life is to be happy. We do not live in God's great terrarium like a little lizard. Just throws food in there and, put us under the little heat lamp. That's not God's will. The goal of humanity is not to be happy. The goal of humanity is to serve the Lord. The real purpose is to know God. And suffering can, at times, be used to know God, permitted in the right situation. Actually, some of the most persecuted Christians in the world live in countries that have some of the greatest revivals taking place in the world. There might even be a correlation between Christians who are pressed down and persecuted and actual revival in their hearts. Also, we got to remember that mankind's in a state of rebellion against God. If you look at the things that bring about suffering, lots of suffering in the world, many of them are rooted in sins that God himself has told us not to do. God doesn't want us to do. God in his word said don't do. And people do them anyway, and we see some suffering from just the sheer sinfulness of humanity in our state of rebellion against God. So now, also remember, in the end, The book of Revelations, God does away with all suffering, all tears are gone. God sees the pain that humanity is going through, and he will deal with it in just the right time when everybody that is called by God is brought into the fold. And we hold that new heaven and new earth, we hold that in our hearts, that there will be a day when there's no pain and suffering. Okay, let's talk about the resurrection of Jesus. One last thought here. There are 4 naturalistic theories of the resurrection of Jesus. In other words, 4 non-Christian theories of what happened to Jesus. We have the conspiracy theory, the apparent death theory, the displaced body theory, and the hallucination theory. We're going to cut these down one by one here today. 4 natural, in other words, they're saying, oh, it wasn't really Jesus being raised from the dead by God. It was something natural that happened. First, the conspiracy theory. This theory says that the disciples faked the resurrection. They stole the body from the tomb. They lied about what happened, and they pulled off the greatest hoax in human history. All right, let's talk about reasons why, number one, the conspiracy theory can't be true. See, this idea that the disciples stole Jesus' body, that was what was being thrown around at the time. In other words, the Jewish leaders were not disputing the idea that the tomb of Jesus was empty. They were just trying to explain why it was empty. Now think about that. The number one theory being thrown around by the Jewish leaders at the time agreed that the tomb was empty. They were just trying to say why the tomb was empty. Now, one of the main reasons is the Jews had no concept of a Messiah that would be defeated and executed and rise from the dead. And so this conspiracy theory does not have an answer for the disciples' willingness to die for their belief in the resurrected Jesus. History proves that all 12 of those disciples died saying, Jesus is the Messiah. I saw him rose from the dead. This is the truth. Now, people die for their religion all the time. And I've heard people say that, well, they're just dying for their religion. Yeah, but no one dies for a religion that they themselves know not to be true. They die for a religion that they believe to be true. They don't die for a lie. No one's going to say, hey, you better fess up here and tell us what happened or I'll kill you. And they're like, look, it's not worth my life. Yes, we stole the body. No, all of them said, I saw him resurrected. We didn't do it. You might as well kill me. It's the truth. Every single one. So number 2, the apparent death theory. This theory says Jesus didn't really die. He revived in the tomb. Somehow he escaped. He was beaten, but he escaped. Then he convinced his disciples that he rose from the dead. All right, let's talk about why this can't be true. 1, it's medically impossible. The Roman executioners, these were professional killers who did this every day. They know how to kill somebody. Matter of fact, it said when the spear entered into Jesus' side, water and blood came out. The water would have been the water from Jesus having a heart attack, proving that he was dead. The Roman executioners were not about to let somebody not die on that cross. Also, Jesus was tortured before his crucifixion. Before he was even put up there, he was tortured. So this tortured, beaten, stabbed, crucified person, are you telling me had enough strength to heal up a little bit in the tomb, and then have enough strength to roll this massive stone away and then fight 2 Roman soldiers outside the tomb? No. And then, when the disciples talked about the resurrected Jesus, they didn't say that he was a half-dead man, beaten up, crawling up, barely alive, inches from death. No, he was in a resurrected body, walking through walls and eating fish. Okay, number 3, the displaced body theory. Okay, this theory says that perhaps Joseph of Arimathea placed Jesus' body in the tomb temporarily. The disciples, seeing the tomb empty, concluded Jesus rose from the dead. But it was really just Joseph of Arimathea had moved him, and they're kind of a miscommunication. The problem with this is Jewish laws at the time prohibited moving a dead body. Joseph of Arimathea would have been doing a grave sin in the eyes of Jewish customs of the day. And once the disciples started preaching that Jesus was resurrected, don't you think Joseph of Arimathea, who was prominent amongst the disciples, would have corrected them and said, no, hey guys, no, that was just me. That's a misunderstanding. And last, we have the hallucination theory. This theory says that the disciples didn't really see Jesus. They imagined that he appeared before them. He appeared to groups, though. He appeared to individuals. He appeared to many people at many times. He even appeared to unbelievers as well. And we don't have one psychological situation that's ever been where we have a mass hallucination. Sometimes people hallucinate and see things. We've never had a group of, 100 people hallucinate the same exact hallucination. That's not how it works. So that theory just doesn't wash. Okay, so did Jesus rise from the dead? Our last thought here of our class. 3 facts that need to be explained. 1, the tomb was found empty. True. 2, the appearance of Jesus alive to his disciples after his death. He did appear to them. And 3, the belief that his disciples had that Jesus had risen from the dead. The disciples believed it. Okay, let's just prove this here once and for all. It's our whole faith is rooted in the idea of Jesus being risen from the dead. Okay, first off, all of Jerusalem knew where the actual tomb that Jesus was buried in was. This was a big deal at the time. The whole town knew. If he was still in there, the whole city would have known that. So as soon as the disciples would have started preaching about his resurrection, the Jewish leaders would have just gone over, to the tomb and said, look, he's right there. He didn't rise from the dead. There's his body. But the tomb was empty. Okay, so proving right there, the tomb was empty. Number 2, resurrection in the time of Jesus did not mean life after death in some disembodied form. No, it didn't mean immortality of the soul. It meant a literal resurrection, an actual body, the reversal of death. And the tomb was found empty in 6 independent sources, 4 Gospels, the book of Acts, book of 1 Corinthians. It's proven the tomb was found empty. Another reason proving the gospel story. If you were going to make up a story, you wouldn't have used women to be the first witnesses of the resurrection of Jesus. The testimony of women was not viewed very high in court, in life at the time. Matter of fact, women were not even allowed in court or to testify in court. So a woman could see somebody get murdered, and they wouldn't even allow that testimony to be put in court because it's a woman. So why would the writers of the Gospels, if you're making up a lie, make it so that women were the first ones to see Christ, unless it's a historically accurate telling of the situation? Number 2, the appearance of Jesus alive to his disciples. In one of the earliest letters of the New Testament, Paul lists witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus. Peter, 12 disciples, 500 others, James. So it's clear that Jesus was appearing to people after his death. So it's not, and if they would have been all saying this happened, it did really not have happened, they would have corrected each other. And number 3, the belief that the disciples had that Jesus had risen from the dead. The only resurrection Jews believed in or believe in is an event for all the people at the end of time, not a one-time event. So something must have happened to these disciples to change the way they believed in the resurrection. So what was it? It was the literal resurrection of Christ that got the disciples to believe this is truly what it is. These disciples were then now completely convinced, even with the threat of death and staring death in the eyes, completely convinced that Jesus really did raise from the dead. And then one last thought. My personal favorite before we do some questions and answers here. By the way, take some time and put your questions in the chat, and Jeannie will get those to me. Okay, so let's start right here with this, my favorite last thought. James, the younger brother of Jesus. James was not a believer in his brother as the Messiah until after the resurrection. Now, why is that important? Well, think about this. What would it take for you to believe that your brother or sister was the Messiah of the world? And be like, dude, that ain't the Messiah. I remember him. I was giving him noogies, That's not the Messiah of the world. It's crazy talk. No, James, after the resurrection, Jesus appears to his younger brother. It's such a transformative work that walking on water didn't do it, feeding 5,000 didn't do it, resurrection of Lazarus in John chapter 11 didn't do it, but seeing his brother raised from the dead transformed James into the disciple that he ended up being and the leader of the body of Christ that he ended up being. Okay, all of those, look, that's just weapons that I'm trying to explain to us why we need and how we can defend our faith in a time like we're going through right now. There is truth. When you put your faith in the things of God, in the word of God, you're not putting your faith in just, maybe, I don't know. You can put your eternity in the hands of our Lord and on his word. It is the truth. Okay, at this time, we're going to take a few questions. If we got a few of them here in our chat. I don't know. It was going by pretty quick, so I wasn't able to see who put down what, but I want to see if anybody's got any questions. I sure have appreciated everybody coming and joining us in this time. It's been really fun to teach on, and it's not the kind of stuff that you can really do on a Sunday morning, clearly. It's kind of deeper, interesting stuff. But I'm glad that we had an opportunity to share it here together in this online Bible study. Okay. Let's see what we got here. I gotta renew my own chat myself. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions today. Thank you. Thank you for spending this time with me together. And I'll stay around here if you want for a few more minutes if you have some questions and you'd like me to answer them. If not, you can go ahead and sign off, whatever works for you. I appreciate you guys being here with me and listening to me chatter on. Oh, is there life on other planets? Is there life on other planets? All right. We see heaven in a couple of different places with beings that are not angels. There are three kinds of angels: archangels, seraphim, and cherubim. Seraphim are flaming angels. Cherubim are the ones that we understand with the kind of the wingish type of guy, not the chubby little angels, but and archangels. There are three of those. Two. They're now only two. But you saw other creatures in heaven around the throne of God, with eyes around and ears and feathers, and it is not completely unbiblical to say that there might be intelligent life out there in some way that we don't understand. We have angelic life, we have creatures in heaven that we don't understand. So this idea that God is limited on that level, I don't know. Here's what I do know. The Bible is written to humanity for us to connect to our Creator. We are made in the likeness and image of God. If there is some other life on other planets, one, I don't think they're necessarily coming around here. But two, they would be, they're not made in the likeness and image of God. They might be some version of intelligent. I don't know, but it's not exclusionary to say that's a possibility. But God wants us to focus our little minds on making sure we connect with our Creator. So the Bible would permit the idea that thinking there might be life on other planets or aliens or etc. But I don't particularly think they're around here. And if they do exist, they have their own set of rules, like angels do, their own set of rules of how to interact with their great God. Okay. Will I be doing another Bible study soon? Probably the next one will be after Easter, and I'm not sure which one I'll do. If you have some suggestions, I'm open to suggestions. We probably are looking at after Easter for our next online Bible study. So good question. Excellent question. And really great to see you guys all. So, all right. Thanks for hanging out with me. Seriously, love you. You guys know how to get a hold of me if you ever need something. You got a prayer request, I'm here for you. And I want to help you in any way possible. God bless you guys. Have an awesome, awesome, awesome week.